Hare
Hare
Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Prabhu.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all very much for the beautiful chanting. Good morning. Let's continue reading from this wonderful book, Japa, by His Grace Bhurijana Prabhu. We completed a couple of sections or chapters. Yesterday we saw how important it is that we have to take care consciously to avoid any criticisms on devotees. Don't criticize devotees. And also we learned about avoiding pramāda, carelessness or inattentiveness while doing these things. Now, the last paragraph of yesterday's reading was clearly to attain taste while chanting Krishna's holy name, we must overcome our inability to pay attention. To accomplish this, it is helpful to understand the nature and working of the mind. Now we are going to study about mind, very interesting chapter, the function and nature of the mind. Kapila Muni describes the mind in the third canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, third canto, 26th chapter, 14th verse as follows. Mano buddhir ahaṅkārah chittam ityanta atmakam chaturdha lakshyate vedah vrittya lakshana rupaya. The internal subtle senses are experienced as having four aspects in the shape of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. Distinctions between them can be made only by different functions, since they represent different characteristics. Manobuddhir ahaṅkāras chittamityanta antaratmakam chaturdha lakshite vedah vrittya lakshana rupaya. One more time I'm reading the translation. The eternal subtle senses are experienced as having four aspects in the shape of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. Distinctions between them can be made only by different functions, since they represent different characteristics. While all four subtle senses, mind, manaha, intelligence, buddhi, false ego, ahaṅkāra, and covered consciousness, chittam, make up the subtle body. Each descends in subtlety from consciousness to false ego to intelligence to the least subtle of the four, the plodding mind. Although the mind, and I request you all to bring your mind over here because we are talking about mind. Again, we may lose track of what has been explained about the functionality of mind. Please focus here. Although the mind and the false ego are in practical terms the same, the mind is functionally less refined than the false ego. We tend to think that the main obstacle to focused chanting is the mind, but it is the subtler false ego that is causing the problem. The mind, being grosser, is subordinate to the false ego and serves it by maintaining and protecting it. In his song, Keno Hare Krishna Nama, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually refers to the conditioned soul's self-concept as Maner Manush, the mentally imagined man, the false sense of self. Krishna's words in the Bhagavad-gītā 7:27 indicates how the mind functions in its protective service. The mind provides a sense of duality to help the false ego maintain its illusory sense of being Lord in the world. The concept, what has been mentioned here, if you are not catching what it means, is the mind is actually a subtle or a servant, subordinate to the false ego, ahaṅkāra. So ahaṅkāra is the main cause of all the problem. And then adding to the ahaṅkāra as a support, mind comes and other things comes. That's a point, underlying point. So, O Sen of Bharata, the conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arising from the desire and hate. Srila Prabhupada speaks of this dualistic functioning of the mind. The distinctions between happiness and distress in the material world of duality are simply mental concoctions. For the so-called happiness and distress are actually one and the same. They are like the happiness and distress in dreams. A sleeping man creates his happiness and distress by dreaming. Although actually they have no existence, the mind in the via media in both dreams and wakefulness, and everything created by the mind in terms of sankalpa and vikalpa, acceptance and rejection, is called manodharma or mental concoction. This is from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 6:17-30 purport by Srila Prabhupada. If you are insulted by someone, the mind races to defend. If you are praised, the mind is pleased and considers the praise giver intelligent. In both instances, the mind protects the false self and thereby assists us to maintain our ignorance of our true identity. Who is the true self? Who are we? When we entered this world, we acquired a covering of ahaṅkāra, which provided us with a false sense of identity. This false identity is all we know. Then, who are we according to our false identity? We might be anything. There are 8,400,000 species to choose from, divided into innumerable classifications. The false ego can adapt any one of those bodily identities and the mind and intelligence that go with them. To create a sense of self, the false ego will embrace any identity other than its true, eternal sense of self. The identity as Krishna's loving servant, that is our true identity. But what happens is that the false ego embraces the identity of that particular body that we take based on our karma and vasanas. So we have to understand how this program works. We have to be aware of that program in first place. The false ego so fills our consciousness that we forget that we belong to Krishna and He to us. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam tells us that the mind is a transformation of egoism in goodness. 3.26-37 Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Intelligence is a transformation of egoism in passion. Same chapter, same canto, same chapter, verse 28. 3.26-28. The mind's business is to protect both our false understanding and our forgetfulness of Krishna, and uses the two mechanisms, sankalpa and vikalpa. Sankalpa means acceptance, vikalpa means rejection, to do so. The intelligence, which is passionate by nature, serves the subtle false self by making plans to satisfy the mind's fluctuations between these two polarities. It may be surprising to think of the mind as influenced by goodness and the intelligence by passion, because we usually consider the intelligence higher than the mind and goodness higher than the passion. But the intelligence is constantly scheming from the future and reframing the past, both functions of Rajoguna. But the intelligence is constantly scheming for the future and reframing the past. This is actually the function of Rajoguna. We experience the reality of the interactions between the mind and intelligence every day. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 11.13.9 and 10 slokas, Lord Krishna explains the interaction between false ego, mind, and intelligence to his devotee Uddhava in slightly different language. My dear Uddhava, a person bereft of intelligence first falsely identifies himself with the material body and mind. When such false knowledge arises within one's consciousness, material passion, the cause of great suffering, pervades the mind, which by nature is situated in goodness. Then the mind, contaminated by passion, becomes absorbed in making and changing many plans for material advancement. Thus, by constantly thinking of the modes of material nature, a foolish person is afflicted with unbearable material desires. The entire material world, gross matter, and the subtle body, which includes the mind, intelligence, false ego, and contaminated consciousness, has been created simply to maintain our delusion that we are something other than servants of Krishna. The mind has the specific function of acceptance and rejection, sankalpa and vikalpa. We accept specific objects that the mind identifies as pleasurable and become averse to others categorized as unpleasant or source of misery. Again, Bhagavad-gītā 7.27 said, Ichchā dvesa samudhena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sarve yanti parantapa. O son of Bharata, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities, arisen from desire and hate. Last paragraph. We are born into this world bewildered by desire, ichcha, and aversion, dvesha. And we fill our time following the mind with passionate intelligence, trying to satisfy its demands. Yoga practitioners have been aware of this dynamic for thousands of years. Patanjali wrote in his Yoga Shastra, Yoga Chitta Vrite Nirodha. The purpose of yoga practice is to stop the mind from its fluctuations based on sankalpa and vikalpa. If you are successful in this, this effect of material energy will stop, and the mind, which by nature wants to support the false sense that we are meant to enjoy this world, will slow down and settle back into its source, the mode of goodness. Sattva sanjayate jnanam. Just by moving the overactive mind toward goodness, even by simply slowing it down, as in the Buddhistic style meditation, one nears transcendence. So what we are trying to do by chanting is all trying to slow down our fast-moving, passionate mind to come under some control. A lot of technical information on this one. Maybe you have to hear one more time this whole thing to make sure we capture all these points, beautiful points. But Krishna is constantly giving us an opportunity in some way or the other to come to a realization that we come out of our thing of egoism. Many times Krishna will give us an opportunity. When Krishna gives an opportunity, we realize the truth about I am not this body, I am servant of Krishna. Those who make use of that opportunity will progress in Krishna consciousness. Those who feed more into the false ego as the situations happens in our life, then unfortunately have to be a bit further caught into this material existence. That's all in simple terms. How we apply this in our Krishna consciousness. So we not only just simply say by saying I'm servant of servant, but in action, in consciousness, we be so. If that is not so, we are just simply parrot that every devotees are telling I am your servant, so I also say I am your servant, but no, nothing in action. So let's take an opportunity when things comes wisely and realize and get away of this false ego and come with a true ego of identity that we are Krishna's servant and servant of servant of servant. Thank you. If there's any questions, 1 minute is there or a few minutes, or anyone wants to add any points, we can talk.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
So there are various strategies described to engage the mind in services and all activities. And then Bhagavad-gītā also, Lord Krishna says that you practice and detach. So is that to control false ego also?
Yes. The first thing is what we are trying to do. We're trying to cultivate this knowledge just to address that false ego first. All that we are trying to learn, how much ever years we are in Krishna consciousness, coming to the same point that we are not this body, we are not this body, we are not this body, then who are you? Are you nothing? No, we are something. What is a something? We are simply servant of Krishna. That's the first understanding. First understanding is we are not this body. Second understanding is, and who are you? I am Krishna's servant. Is that all? Then the advanced stage of that is no, I'm not actually Krishna's servant. I'm servant of Krishna. That is the highest understanding. So yes, the false ego is the first thing that we identify through the knowledge, but the knowledge by itself is not going to help us to come to a realization until we have some practice of controlling that mind to not assist the false ego. But how does the mind is going to be controlled, not assist the false ego, is by chanting Krishna's name. Right? The whole idea of why we are chanting is to control the mind to not assist the false ego. Because false ego is a fundamental problem that every one of us have. In one way or the other, some form or the other, it comes to the surface. If not today, tomorrow. So therefore, the whole practice is to control the mind, not to support the false ego. But that is not only enough. We need to have a substantial knowledge to identify, to understand what this false ego is. Yes. Hope it makes sense, Prabhu. Yatulananda Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Thank you all very much. We'll meet again tomorrow at 5 a.m. Central Time. Until then,